This is the Bishop Dawn Magic Wand Nymph. It's a cross between a Caddis pupa and a Scud. It's green for the money and gold for the honeys. We're going to tie one of these bad boys up. So grab a cup of chill as we sit back and go on the vise with the FlyOlderGuy. So I've got a size 14 curved hook and a copper bead head in the vise. I'm going to grab a little bit of a lead-free wire, I'd say a little bit more than an inch, just to get you going here. And about 6 or 7 wraps I think we get in here, about 7 wraps, maybe 8 wraps, and a helicopter that end off. And then, on the backside, when I try to helicopter, I always seem to pull it up. So what I like to do is I go in with my material scissors and just give that a little trim. See that little tag end sticking up? We'll tend to that in a second. They never just fold down as easy as you want them to. And I actually use the thread to just lock that in. I'm not a big proponent of crazy gluing everything. I just, too much crazy glue. So what I do is we just kind of wrap the thread around the wire and we seal that in. I'm going to give it a little bit of a taper. You don't have to worry too much about the taper because we're going to work the taper as we tie in our materials. And the first material we're going to tie in is this Madeira. It's like a metallic Madeira. It's a thin, sparkly material. And I just kind of loop that over and tie that in right there at the base of the wire. Twist that in a little bit, tie it down, and then I also like to tie it back up and kind of tie down that loop. So we're tying down that loop up closer to the bead head, and that's going to come into play later. And you'll see I kind of tend that tail end section. And I continue to tend it because when you stop tending it, it gets a little flippity-dippity. So you can see, look, flippity-dippity. So we get back here and we finish tying it down right up until about the bend there. And then we're going to reach for this black rubber dubbing material, and I'm taking out one strand of this and I'm going to use it for another piece of tailing material. And you'll see you fold it over in a loop and kind of hangs down like that, and it does look like those little tails. It's actually a nice little tailing material for a pupa or a Scud even. Look at that. Look at the way it hangs down. So we kind of wrap that in. It's rubbery. It bounces around. It doesn't always want to cooperate, but again, with this, you're sort of tying it all in together. So you'll see me pull all these tailing materials, I'll call them, together. And then I go down for a little piece of this standard tubing. This is Chartreuse Tubing, a hairline tubing. It's a standard size. And just trim off about, again, a little bit more than an inch. And this you're going to stretch. You can stretch this out. Always stretch this out because it totally expands. That's much longer than the original piece I cut. Continuing to stretch right before I wrap it in there. And wrapping it in at this tie-in point, we're on the bend now. We're just about at the bend. And as I said, that taper is going to build up as we tie in these materials. So tying in this tubing, you can see on the way up there, boop, it's adding to this taper. It's actually making a pretty decent taper right now. And I'll tie that back down, back to the bend, which is my new tie-in point. And we're going to grab a little bit of this tinsel. This is 2-sided tinsel. It's gold on one side and silver on the other. And we're going to give ourselves a generous 2 inches of this stuff. Tie that in silver side up because we want the gold. We want that gold to show through. So we tie the silver side in, facing out, and then the gold will wrap. So silver out when you tie it in, and then the gold is going to be out when you wrap the material. So we just secure this, and then I tie it up a little bit up to the top. As soon as I figure out, see, I'm checking to see how far down we're going on the bend. You want it to be on that bend a little bit, at least a little bit. You can go down a little further if you like, but I like to see that material start to bend down, and then I'll start to work my thread back up. And I'm working the thread back up to the top. And when this Madeira sparkle material starts to shift, then I know I've wound it up enough. And I'm just going to hang the thread there and start to wrap the tinsel. And I'm not using a material clip here. I find it's a little bit easier if I wrap it with my fingers. I get a better grip on it, and I leave myself enough of the tinsel to really get a nice grip on it. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to tie it off nicely, right? We want to make sure you keep your tension on this thread. I'm extra careful when it comes to tying down materials. I always give it a couple extra twists. And then for the tubing, I am going to grab my material clip, because the worst thing is just to have that tubing snap away. So we start to wrap, and then you can see it's just not quite on the butt. And right before I start to tighten it up too much, I can put my fingers in there and pinch it down a little bit. So I pinched it down a little bit to adjust it. And these are overlapping wraps, at least overlapping to touching. And then once I've gotten to this collar section, I give it a couple extra just to sort of build up that collar or that thorax. And just like I said before, I really like to make sure I have a tight seal when I wrap off the material, because the worst thing you can do is release the material and have it bounce and spin away, and you're back at the beginning. So you can see it's tied off nicely. And grab my scissor after I'm a little more thorough tying it down. But I'll grab my scissor and I'll trim that off. And then what I'll do is I'll take that tinsel and tie that tinsel down. This is sort of like a wing case. It's more like a little, just a flash attractor. It's a little bit of both. Like I said, it's a cross between, the appearance, the profile is like a pupa and a scud, kind of. So I trim off this Madeira material, and I'm tying this down almost like you're tying down a wing. So it's very similar to a wing. These are sparkle. It's a sparkle, like Bishop Don Magic Wand. He's got to have some glitter on him. He's going to have a little glitter there. There's green, there's gold, and you got to have some shine. Right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to make this leggy thorax looking material. So I've taken more of this rubber dubbing and I'm trimming it up. I'm trimming it up longer and shorter strands. Make a little pile of it. It's like 2 or 3 strands. I think it was 3 strands that I chopped up there. And then I'm going to grab like a whisper of black dubbing. Pinch that up. And you can see it's mostly that rubber, and the only thing that dubbing, the other dubbing is going to do is just going to keep it together a little bit. And I'm overlapping the wraps with that rubber legging material to keep it tied down. Tying it down. And then I'm going to pull the tinsel forward like a wing case after I wrestle with this skinny little Madeira shiny strip there. Get it out of the way. And we're going to tie it over those rubber legs. You see, I slipped a little bit, but because I was very thorough in tying it, it only popped off like 1 or 2 wraps. I'm able to recover. And look, I tie flies to catch fish. not to win beauty contests, all right? So what we're doing here is we're going to trim off the tinsel after we locked it down. I tied a little bit behind and a little bit in front. I'm going to grab the whip finish tool, and I usually give it about 5 turns on the whip finish tool. 3, 4, and 5. We pop that off, and then we're going to just cut that thread, and then we're going to give it a little bit of an inspection. All right, we have some long legs over there we need to trim down, and that flash Madeira material is a little bit long, so we'll trim off those legs. We'll try to trim that shiny Madeira. Look at that. Look at that. The bishop is taking shape here. Another little long piece of that rubber dubbing. Trim that down a little bit, not too short. The tail is a little longer than I like. It depends, sometimes I leave it long. It's nature. You're mimicking nature. Nothing is perfect. Nothing is exact, So it's looking pretty good. We're going to grab some of this UV finish. It's a thin, and give it the old traditional bloop, little dot bubble head, and then come in with the UV light and just give it a twist here and there. The traditional 15 seconds or so. I go a little bit longer. I just like to be thorough. I like to make sure that it's really nice and secure on there. And you can see it's coming through nice. That gold, it pops. It really does pop. But that's about it for the Bishop Dawn Magic Wand Nymph. I hope you all enjoyed the tie, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay fly.